Well, good morning, everybody. I thought we'd start off this Wednesday by looking at the temperature ranks by climate district starting on Thanksgiving. And it's been an interesting pattern that's set up. You can see that there's a definite west to east bias in the temperature pattern with much more mild conditions west and much colder conditions east. And it's very indicative of the direction the flow has been. It's been doing something like this, for a while. I do want to point out a couple of things, though. During that time frame, we've got a few locations in here that are having the top 5, like coldest finishes to November and starts to December on record. And there's going to be big questions about how this continues to play out as we get later in the month, because in order to get some of the big gaps to fill in that have been so dry, I'm talking about the wet, California, getting through the, the Four Corner states into the central part of the United States, and to get away from this just singular corridor like right in through here of more active weather. Well, also I have to include, really Washington more than anything here. To break away from that, we've got to reorient the temperatures, right? You've got to bring this mild air here and keep much colder air there and get in the middle of the jet to go through. And then it'll just wake the whole thing up. And we've seen some models tease at that, but I'm going to call it into question as to what it might do. One other thing to point out on this, notice that the Thule fog or the Thule low-level cloud field that's been in California's Central Valley is now showing up statistically, keeping things cooler in that particular region. Now, yesterday's temperatures, these were the max temperatures yesterday, just showing a huge warm-up that was well forecast in the central United States, while we just managed to anchor some Arctic air right in through this corridor here. But take note, and through California, how much cooler it is under that cloud cover. Well, we did see temperatures climbing way up into the 60s as far north as South Dakota. Very, very mild conditions here. And I was curious, as we started to bring these above freezing temperatures, and what it was going to do to the snowpack. I couldn't really see it very well on satellite because there was cloud over the top of it, but I was watching to see if the southern edge of the snowpack, which you see here, was going to erode. But as I did, you could see some changes in it. I can give you testament of my backyard, what's going on there. And I live right over in East Central Illinois. We saw quite a bit of the snow melt for us, but take a look at some of the more dense fogs we saw down here in the southeast or throughout the lower Mississippi River Valley toward the Arkansas and Red River Valley as well. And again, just another day of just nearly opaque skies here in parts of California's Central Valley. All right, since we're talking about snow, let's go look at one, again, interesting map from the European model. It's snow depth, right? So we can kind of see the changes, not just what's getting added. And what's neat about this is this was starting off last night, 6 p.m. Central Time. And through this morning, did you see the bottom edge of that erode? That's where that more mild air, look at this. This is last night through this morning. This is where we're expecting to see some of that snow melt. We're also watching some of the snow melt that was in parts of West Virginia, northern parts of North Carolina. And as we just play it forward here, you can also see the increase in some of the lake effect coming off of Erie and Ontario. Now, just watching this, let me just keep playing it, right? So that's through Thursday. We do have quite an active pattern. So do you notice the next skiff of snow? I don't know why I'm calling it a skiff. There's good snowfall that's expected to come through here Thursday night to Friday. And then we're going to watch again Saturday. Look at that. Another addition there in the day on Saturday into Sunday, hitting that same corridor. So if you feel like I focused a lot on this region, this has been the active corridor for quite some time, and it might continue to be that way through at least the next 5 to 10 days overall. Now, if we're going to look for a big warm-up, I'm just going to keep playing this out. You just want to see all that snow erode. And take a look at this. We're all the way out there to the 17th, 18th, and 19th. And look at that snow depth change. So we're on a pretty volatile temperature pattern. And I'm curious if we ever reorient this thing to bring it back to where I'm adding up huge snows into California's Sierra Nevada mountains. Now, we're at 192 hours in the European operational run. So we're out, we jokingly call it La La Land. But the farther out we go, the model's like, all right, do it, flip it. Flip the pattern over and clear out that fog, bring in deeper flow into the west, and pack the mountains up with snow. Now, that's leading up to Christmas Eve, and we've got big questions out that far that the ensembles don't agree with this particular operational run. But coming back to the very beginning of this, I'm impressed with one thing, and that was if we look at NASA's modeling of soil moisture, do you see how they brought up a big increase right in through here just recently? Now, there's been precipitation in that area. It's not deep, okay? Go down to 16 inches, and we still have the problems of fall's drought still lingering in this area. But that snowmelt was captured in their modeling, as you see there. Now, elsewhere around the Great Lakes, we're quite dry. Coming out of Wyoming into Nebraska, very, very dry. The southern plains have been getting drier with time because of the way that the jet stream is just completely avoiding that area. But there's your active corridor. See it? Very, very clear in here. And with those warm temperatures coming up, we were able to melt some of that snow and get it into the ground, which is critical. All right, but these temperatures are not set. Very mild go of it compared to yesterday, right into this corridor. We're cooling off in the south and east, but there is a reservoir of very cold air that's getting colder with time that is going to just make this shot right through this section of the United States. And I'll give you a good look at that in just a few moments. First, though, I want to talk about winds. These are the winds early this morning, still very strong in the central United States. You can see, though, a reorientation of the direction of these winds. We've now pushed them much farther to the south into Texas. They've ripped through parts of the Midwest. And we're going to look out here and just see how strong they're expected to be today. These wind gusts are capable of getting over 40 to 50 miles an hour, just playing through Thursday into Friday. Very, very strong winds in through this area, and then coming downslope off the mountains, as you can see here. Columbia Basin continues to see strong winds. The closer you are to the mountains here, the tougher this is going to be. I mean, I got to drive this I-90 through here recently. Man, that can be a ride coming off that with all of those winds in that region. Just wanted to give you a quick look, though, at what we're expecting. So very windy pattern through a specific corridor of the United States. All right, all hazards weather map, about 5:45 this morning Central Time. We have seen the National Weather Service drop this. I'm sorry, my map still has it on there. But you can see the wind issues here, the winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings. They extend kind of through this corridor here. And then on the backside, still watching the flooding issues in the northwest. We have winter weather advisories and winter storm watches here, and very strong winds expected in this region. We do have a freeze and frost advisory combo down here in parts of Georgia and Georgia into northern Florida. And again, this is one corridor that got some desperately needed rain recently, but just continue to watch that very productive corner of the United States whole landscape. And they're dealing with some pretty chilly temperatures coming through there. All right, onto the radar. This starts last night and goes through this morning. Again, as Matt pointed out yesterday, we did get some rain out of this pretty far to the north. But as it flipped back over, farther to the east here, it's pushing a decent shield of rain through this region here in the Ohio River Valley. And the transition to snow is a bit tricky to find this morning. But just a constant flow coming into the Pacific Northwest, specifically into Washington, just continues to pile up tremendous amounts of rain there. I want to show you that snow. Now, this only goes through 6 p.m., Central Time last night. This is the last 72 hours. So this, of course, was well before this. And we had the snow that came through parts of, the Appalachian Mountains, West Virginia here too. So if we just back this up, let's look at a 48-hour total. There you go. That's the last 2 days. And so there's that most recent, band of 6+ inches of snow that came through this area. All right. Okay, where are we going forward with this? Well, I'm loving my new map. I don't know. Sometimes I just admire my own website. I like it. I use it. I look at it 150 times a day. But you've got here, your 5 model forecast on snow. Can you identify that same corridor? I'll get into the details of these maps in a few moments. I just want to make sure you go and see them. They're on AgWeather. Just click on the Weather Maps tab at the top and you'll find them. If we look at the high-res NAM, just as some early guidance here, over the next 60 hours, see this tricky bit right in through here where that rain-snow boundary is going to be. That's what I was talking about. We have some snow out ahead of this in Ohio and Pennsylvania forecast, but then you might flip it over to rain. See that? And then the snow pushes into parts of the Northeast. We have some possibly some snow squalls coming in on the back side of this, very brief, intense, local bits of snow. They're not really setting up as the model typically does with the squall, but I'm just telling you, watch out for that. And then we see that system exit northeast. So now you can see a little bit of lake effect, some light snow moving through Wednesday night. And then we're going to watch that system leave. Now, back to the northwest. Let's take you back here. Still the flow comes on. Look at the split across parts of Montana with the downslope winds warming things up, bringing the rain here, but out ahead of it, snow in northeastern Montana. That then slides into the Dakotas, watching right in through here. This is by 7 a.m. on Thursday. And then we're going to watch this corridor very, very carefully because it will access better cold air Thursday afternoon and evening. And there's the risk into this region of grabbing another couple of inches of snow right in through there. Okay, let's go talk about that snow. Just look at the map. This is total accumulated snow from this morning's high-res NAM run. So there's round number 1. Round number 2 is beginning in the northwest through Montana. There it is. So through Thursday, now getting into Friday, these deeper shades of gray down here are 2 to 3 inches. And models are trying to toss out in some spots maybe over 4. So there's a really good chance of getting a couple of inches in this area, some pockets of some heavier snow, just to point that out. You can see the much greater totals, which are typical on this side of the Great Lakes with access to colder air. But during this time period, I mean, the flow is avoiding so much of the southwestern United States, and we're curious when that's going to turn around. Let's see if either of our GFS or ECMWF model runs picked up on any hint of that, just looking at operational runs. So we've looked through this time period, that's Thursday into Friday, pretty carefully. All right. So that is now Friday at 12 a.m., so Friday morning. Playing through the day on Friday now, getting into Saturday. Both models, again, have another round of snow coming through that same corridor I just pointed out. All right. Now, getting beyond that into Sunday into Monday. There you go. That's your Monday morning. Look at this. Can you almost get, it's around a low, but you can almost get a sense of flow coming in this direction. That's December the 15th. We start to see more of Northern California getting in on this. And my question is out there on the 17th, 18th, and 19th. Look. See how the models are trying to, I don't know, I'm looking at the European. I'm getting a sense like this and something like that. We've just not seen the flow coming fully out of the south and west in a while. And there's just this hint that past mid-month, something gets reoriented here. Something just changes. It's probably related to the MJO making a brief collapse into null space. Something gives up. The colder air reorients. There's a lot of things going on here, but that's what the models are suggesting. I was talking about the snow, so let's just do a quick model rundown here of the snow through the next 7 days. So the European is really high on that little track right there after this comes through, and then you can see the impacts in the northeast as the lows kind of roll through that area. And then, of course, just the tremendous amounts of snow that are coming with that strong onshore flow into British Columbia. There's the AI forecast. I've now got the GFS. Again, look at that. The GFS also has this coming through, increasing the confidence through that corridor of getting more snow. And at the end of it, I have the NBM. And it's interesting. The NBM kind of fills in the gap right in through here. Remember how the previous models were farther south? NBM kind of fills in that gap, and it looks at some very huge lake effect events coming off of all of our Great Lakes. To be honest, I hope this fills in Montana like is being suggested here, because we know we've been dealing with some drought issues in Montana, that more snow right now could really be could be a help in that direction toward breaking away from some of these drier conditions. We've had good snows lately in pockets, so we just need to keep adding it up here. I want to show you something new I've been working on, and I hope you like it. I like the ability to be able to zoom in and see things and bounce around, and then I like this hover ability where you can see the precipitation amount. So I've been working hard on a new set of vector graphics, and we're looking at the European model here. And what's nice is, look, it loads fast. I'll just reload all of this. Well, I tell you it loads fast. There it goes. It just goes zipping through all of the values, and you just wait 2 or 3 seconds, and now you have the ability to just dive in and see all 360 hours of the forecast from the European model. I'm going to do this with all the models, including the high-res and radar, so you'll be able just to zoom in, adds more details, shows you things. We'll do this with every variable too. I'm really excited about this to get away from, you know that right now I generate 180,000 static maps a day. I'd rather go down to this almost tile server-like setup here. So I've been working hard on this for the last few weeks, and I'm looking forward to releasing this to you. Now, a lot of you I know copy my links. Don't you go to this one. This is my test server here, and I won't update this every day. It's just in test mode right now, but I wanted you to see that, and I was curious what you thought of it. By the way, I know some of you wanted a new color bar. I am trying to build it so that you can switch color bars. Like, I don't like this one. I want to see the one that goes into the red. So you'll be able to do that. But can I just show you this? Let's just go out. You can see here, there's 10 days at 240 hours. We do see our corridors. Now remember, the European is the model dropping the better precip into this area. Right? There's your corridors, and then they really fill in this gap here with time. This whole region, though, just continues to be painted dry by all the models. I'm getting concerned about it because for the last 2 weeks, maybe beyond that for some folks, we've been just very, very dry in these areas. And even spots like, whoa, look, we've brought up the moisture. No. Recently we've gone over dry here too. And there's just beginning to become more of a concern in this part of the United States as to what the rest of winter might hold. Because from here all the way to California, which has been bone dry, even though we've had that thick cloud layer here, the story is this: jet stream flow in that direction. All right. So thinking it through, what about these next 7-8 days? This is the probability from the European ensemble at staying under 1/10 of an inch. And that is a lot of area. I mean, you can find the active corridor. There it is. We've talked about that at length. If you're outside of that flow, it's just drier. Now, as we add on more time, let's just take you out to 10 days. Does it erode? Not really. Not here. We have to really completely reorient the flow of the atmosphere to have just consistent pull-on Gulf moisture back to get southwest flow out of the jet stream, and we'll just pop storms off this area nonstop. Big Colorado lows will come out of that setup, but it's not there yet through the next 10 days. On the wetter side of things, these are the probabilities through the next 10, 11 days on getting over an inch of liquid equivalent. So a lot of the Ohio River Valley downward of the Great Lakes interior of the Northeast. And then you can see here in the Northwest, in fact, let's just keep bumping this up. That's 2, 4, 8. We've been doing this all week, right? 15. There's a lot of moisture streaming into this area. So let's just continue to be aware of that. So will the jet ever reorient? Well, this is what it's doing now. Can you kind of see it? That's what I just drew in those arrows. We just play it forward. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, reinforcing shots of very cold air. We'll talk about that in a second. But I'm just curious if the models are sniffing something out past mid-month. You ready for this? That's the 18th, 19th, 20th. Now, what have I been claiming? I just keep saying, like, I think the week of Christmas has something to it. Matt showed you this yesterday. Look how much deeper the trough is now here. Now, I'm sorry. I know we're in the ensemble. We're 340 hours. But can you just watch this evolve with me? If it's not here tomorrow, then we have to correct the story. But what is this? This is a blocked high over low pattern from the Bering Sea, honestly, to north and west of Hawaii, setting up a trough in this area. And if that occurs, then we start to, you get this, which is what we've been kind of craving if we're in those really dry spots. Monitor it. We'll just have to monitor it. I will just point out, I've been in love with this graph. I know you think that, but I have noticed, okay, that out there around the 17th, do you see that? That is the European weeklies taking a trough that Matt talked about yesterday and reorienting here and bringing it across the country and then reestablishing something in that area, which means we could get into a bit of a regime change past the middle of the month. I'm highly skeptical of my own forecast because this feels like a time period lately that the atmosphere has been more favoring persistence than anything else, right? How many times have I drawn those same arrows I drew a moment ago on our slides? But we'll monitor this, okay? Here's your 4 model day 8 through 14 forecast. It is important to note that more of the models are bringing California's northern half into better precipitation with time, including the CPC analysis. But you've got to really excite the jet to come through here to completely eliminate this. And that is still mainly in the week 2 forecast. It's not until you get to the end of the week 2 forecast that we seem to see any sort of meaningful possibilities. That's the only way to think of it. I'm not going to say meaningful change. But I do want to point out that when we look at the new CPC data, I should have showed you this on Monday, but I forgot. Their December 20th to January 1st, they have taken away this larger area of dry, and they're still concerned about here, but they've kind of removed that, okay? And I think it could be indicative of just better west to east or zonal flow setting up by the time we get toward the week of Christmas. Maybe just a little bit sooner. Precipitation-wise, this is a 1-week sliding window looking through the new European weeklies. I'm looking for just any sort of vote of confidence that the model is, in fact, creating these 2 troughing events. And what I see is here's this week, and that gets you through next week. So not a whole lot of change, but the the weeklies, the long range here, are including more of California in the flow. Now, this is what we're trying to watch erode. As we go forward, look, this is the week of Christmas. And you start to see this increasing in here. And it's not increasing from that direction. It seems to be doing something like this. So that's why I'm still kind of thinking that week of Christmas could have a signal change for us that needs to be monitored. But it's out there so far. I'm just not confident in it. We then get into the beginning of January. We start to see more of the West getting into this action, but we lose a lot of the signal elsewhere. All right. Let's go now to temperatures. I just want to point out our frost risk getting pretty far to the south here. But look how mild we are in the Columbia Basin, getting over toward the Palouse, Moscow and northern parts of Idaho. Very, very mild. Temperatures, though, this is today's max temperatures. I love this. Look how well the model's picking up on that dense fog or that low-level cloud field for some of you. But then we just watch Arctic air just barrel right in through here while the much, much above average temperatures continue to come off of the the flow here into parts of the Central Plains. So look at these 70s. But here it goes. That is now Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Just Arctic air racing through this area. 14 degrees is the high on Sunday, currently getting forecast by the NDFD. Very mild west. That shot of colder air just moves east. And just we look at these minimum temperatures for a moment here. This would be Thursday morning, Friday morning. That's Saturday morning. But Sunday morning, minus 22 in Grand Forks, minus 14 Minneapolis. Quad Cities at minus 10. Very, very cold air coming in middle of this weekend while we're still mild south and mild west. Bigger picture. I love these, okay? Take note of this. Look at the orientation right here of the cold versus warm air. And then take note of it in the day 5 through 10, and then the day 10 through 15. You see the reorientation of that line? It's actually in all the models. Could this be the thing that would need to take the jet away from its northwest flow to more westerly flow and set us up for that active, week leading into Christmas? I think there's just something to it. I think there's a story there that we need to be following. There's one counter argument to this. I rewound the clock here back to the 30th, and we're looking at the polar vortex strength. That was the first time it had just really bottomed out, right around Thanksgiving. The forecast for the 14th, let's just look at it, was for the polar vortex to return to its normal kind of band of averages, right? Now, as I play this forward, where's the 14th? It's now right in through here. Look at this. It was forecast here, but the polar vortex strength has now dropped, meaning that the models have not been able to treat. Look at that. Holy cow. If I get all the way to the current forecast, which is there, now the 14th is here. The polar vortex is substantially weakened once again. Yet if you go back just a couple of weeks, it was forecast to be back up closer to average. What's my point telling you this? Our ability to predict this wildly wobbling polar vortex, which over the next few days is expected to break off into two lobes, two areas of heating in the stratosphere, just tells us that this is going to continue to be the wild card. And you're saying, what do you put this together for me? Well, I just showed you, like if we got to day 10 through 15, I'm like, holy cow, look at this mild air that's trying to come into this area. Out of the west, just overtaking such a huge area of the country. But if the polar vortex is disrupted during this time, you could reorient this in a heartbeat with just Arctic blasts that keep coming through those same areas, depending on the location of the polar vortex, which I would argue is not well known right now. All right, that's my case in point. But again, all the models are calling for it, but they're also, I think, not clear on what's exactly happening there. So this next week, yeah, looks like this. Then we get out there, look, this is middle month. Look, see how it kind of changes up a little bit in its orientation? That's through the week of Christmas. That's the GFS extended. And then the models into January are like, yeah, you know what? Let's just drop that back in again. Boom, right there. He just finds that corridor once again. Now that's the GFS interpretation. Let's go look at the European weeklies. So let's take you back. There's now. Look at how much more mild the European weeklies are out there toward the week of Christmas. And then afterwards, they just drop it in. They just drop that cold air back in and erode this mild air in the southern plains out. Now, this model does have a bias toward cold west. I know that. I've been watching it for years do that, but I just want you to be aware that this pattern may be dictated by this. It's the MJO, right? Came out phase 6 back in November, 7, 8. We talked about this on Monday, how interesting of a transition that is. It's now collapsing, but it's going to pop back out. And I just want to know, is it going to pop back out over here eventually, or is it going to live over in phase 8 or something? Because if it does, and we get to the end of the year and we're in phase 8, all right, you know this, that's the flow that does like that around the deeper trough. But let's just imagine into early January, we're looking at like a phase 2 or phase 3, I don't know. If we end up doing that, we go mild east, cold west, and jet stream flow out of the southwest. That would be what needs to happen. You need to see these forecasts taking all of this and then doing that. Like at the end, just coming around in this direction. And then we have to be in an entirely different regime. But I don't know that we can bank on that happening. I will tell you this. We're dominated by what are called Kelvin waves, convectively coupled Kelvin waves. Forgive me there. They're just going across. And I think that pattern might be on repeat at least through halfway through this new month, maybe beyond that. Okay? I mean, maybe into the third week of December. So that narrative means what I just told you a moment ago about possible changes. I got to see a bigger shift somewhere else in the world in order to really anchor into that and make some sense out of it. So where do we finish this up? All of our longer range forecast models, I always stack them up, the ENSO observations on the AgWeather site. They're all looking at changes toward out of La Niña to El Nino pretty quickly. Matt talked about it yesterday, and we've been kind of keeping this narrative. Like, look at our ocean temperatures in the middle of the equatorial Pacific. Drop, drop, drop. They came up, and as we said, they're going to do this. All right, they're just going to slowly etch their way back up. The Southern Oscillation Index, that peak that it was at, is just crashed. We're now back below 7, which is right there. And this means the trade winds have temporarily kind of given up. And as a result, we're expecting La Niña conditions to fade fast. Now, I'm just going to piggyback on something Matt brought up yesterday because I think it's valid. When we look beyond this winter and just say, well, what about spring? The new NMME forecast, the National Multi-Model Ensemble, is like, yeah, get rid of La Niña, bring in El Nino. But the wild card is not going to be this by spring. It's going to be this. How much warm water overtakes the North Pacific, specifically the Northeast Pacific? Because the orientation of that warm water will ultimately determine our late winter pattern, which right now, the February, March, April pattern, according to the NMME, is to plant high pressure here and high pressure here, at least somewhere near these areas. So the flow is around or it's over the top. So you see how we're wetter in these corridors. But I will tell you that this particular model initialization was super sensitive to the fact that we were drier here lately, drier in the Central Plains and drier into California. It's just carrying that forward. But you want to talk about some model mismatches? You remember how Matt was saying, well, there's no agreement out there. I'll just tell you this. If we do warm all of this up and it gets hot here, the chances of it being a dry summer in the Midwest, Plains, Upper Midwest, this whole region of the country, is not there. This is a signal for storms in this region. Look what the model's doing, though. That same area I just talked about, they're April, May, June. Matt showed you some analog years, showed you 5 of them yesterday. Let's see, it's drier, right? It's wetter in the southeast. It's wetter. It's got an active super duper early monsoonal signal here. I don't put any stock into this. But to show you how inconsistent this is, and this means don't believe what anybody says. If you're going to some meeting or hear some long-range forecast and someone comes out and makes a bold claim about 2026, don't believe them. Don't believe any of them. And if you hear me at a meeting say I know what's going on in 2026, you can walk out. Just leave, because that's a lie. We don't know. But watch this. This is the NMME. This is the same time period, April, May, June, from the European. That same dry area, oh, no, the European says bring it on. It's going to be really, really wet in this part of the country. So that's where we are. I just wanted to make sure that was abundantly clear. Stay away from snake oil salesmen on long-range weather forecasts. All right, let's finish it up with South America. You look back over the last month or so up to the 8th, we got very dry in these areas, right? We talked about that. We then watched, if we just keep this playing here, let's see if I can get it to go. There we go. This is, if I can get this to load, sorry about that. This is the storm that just went through, bringing moisture into that same area that was so very dry just in the last 2 days. And the models suggest, they both agree on this, that low exits and then another front passes through by Friday into Saturday, hitting these same dry corridors. And these are just kind of huge mid-season rains leading toward the middle of the month that when you add it all up, looks something like this. By the way, if you're watching me from South America, I have global, I'm doing that whole thing I mentioned to you earlier. Where did I even put that? I don't even know. I'm doing this on global maps to be able to see those. So I do not know why my internet is slowing down this morning, but you can just see the moisture trying to fill in some of these gaps that have been very, very dry. Big question marks will be for Argentina as we go forward. They are expected to get another round of rain late this weekend into Monday, but I want to know if they end up getting into typical dryness with a fading La Niña. That's it. I'll talk to you again on Friday. Matt will pick it up tomorrow morning. Have a good one. Thanks.